growth is a lethal trap for most billion-dollar empires. While conventional wisdom suggests that getting bigger always leads to better margins, the data from the last century of American enterprise reveals a more complex reality known as the diseconomies of scale. This phenomenon explains why a company with 10,000 employees often moves 10 times slower than a startup with 20, and why expansion frequently leads to a collapse in profit percentages despite rising revenue. Understanding this threshold, the point where growth becomes a liability, is the difference between a sustainable legacy and a corporate bankruptcy. In the next few minutes, the mechanics of organizational bloat, the mathematical reality of communication tax, and a strategy of the world's most efficient firms will be laid bare. At the start of any business journey, economies of scale are the primary driver of success, as doubling production might lower the cost per unit by 30 or 40%. This initial phase allows a factory producing 1,000 widgets to negotiate better raw material prices and utilize expensive machinery more effectively than a basement operation. However, every organization eventually hits a mathematical ceiling where the average cost per unit begins to rise instead of fall, creating a U-shaped cost curve. Once a firm surpasses a certain headcount, often cited by organizational psychologists as the 300-employee mark, the administrative overhead required to manage the people begins to outweigh the efficiency gained by the machines. Consider a regional logistics firm that scales from 50 trucks to 500. Suddenly, the simple task of scheduling requires a middle management layer that costs millions in annual salaries without adding a single mile to the delivery route. This is the first stage of the diseconomy, the shift from productive labor to purely coordinative labor. A study of Fortune 500 companies suggests that as firms grow in size, the percentage of revenue spent on internal processes can increase by as much as 15%, effectively eating the very margins the growth was supposed to provide. When a company reaches this stage, every new hire is no longer a revenue generator, but a potential source of friction. Large-scale retailers often find that opening their 1,000th store yields a significantly lower return on investment than their 10th store, primarily because they are forced into less desirable locations with higher operating costs. This law of diminishing returns is a constant shadow over aggressive expansion strategies. The data tells a different story for those who ignore these limits, often leading to a situation where the sheer mass of the enterprise becomes its own greatest competitor. But here's where it gets interesting. The most expensive part of growth isn't the physical infrastructure. It's the invisible airwaves of communication. Communication in a large organization follows a mathematical law of complexity. As the number of people increases linearly, the number of potential communication channels increases exponentially. In a team of 5 people, there are only 10 possible connections. In a department of 50, that number jumps to over 1,200. This leads to a phenomenon known as information entropy, where the original intent of a CEO's directive loses clarity as it passes through 5 or 6 layers of management. By the time an order reaches the frontline workers, statistics suggest that only 20 to 30% of the original strategic objective remains intact. Large enterprises frequently suffer from meeting bloat, where high-value executives spend upwards of 70% of their workweek in synchronizing sessions rather than executing tasks. If 10 executives earning $200 an hour spend 4 hours in a redundant meeting, the company has effectively spent $8,000 on a single conversation. This communication tax manifests as a massive slowdown in decision-making speed. Where a small firm might pivot its product line in a weekend, a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate may take 18 months to approve a minor packaging change. This lag time creates an opening for smaller, more agile competitors to capture market share before the giant can even respond. Software development provides a classic example. Brooks' Law states that adding manpower to a late software project only makes it later, because the time required for new people to communicate and catch up exceeds the work they actually contribute. The complexity of the network becomes a barrier to the work itself. As these channels clog with bureaucracy, the individual worker begins to feel like a gear in a machine they no longer understand. This leads to a second, even more dangerous form of diseconomy, the dilution of the very talent that built the company. The Ringelmann Effect, a psychological concept discovered in 1913, reveals that as the size of a group increases, the individual productivity of each member actually decreases. In a tug-of-war experiment, It was found that when 8 people pulled together, they did not pull 8 times as hard as one person. Instead, each person exerted only 50% of their individual capacity. In a corporate setting, this is known as social loafing or labor dilution. When a company employs 50,000 people, the individual contribution of a single analyst feels statistically insignificant, leading to a measurable drop in engagement and accountability across the board. Internal data from major consulting firms indicates that top-tier talent often leaves large organizations not for better pay, but for more autonomy. The A players who thrive on impact find themselves stifled by a culture that prioritizes process over results, leaving the company with a workforce that trends toward the average. Furthermore, large-scale hiring often forces companies to lower their standards to meet headcount targets. If an organization needs to hire 500 engineers in a single quarter, the statistical probability of maintaining the same talent density as a 10-person startup is nearly zero. This dilution of quality results in more errors, more rework, and higher long-term costs. The sheer physical distance between leadership and the front lines also creates a moral diseconomy, where employees feel less connected to the customer experience. A report from the manufacturing sector showed that as plant size increased beyond 600 workers, the rate of safety incidents and product defects rose by 12%. This internal decay is often hidden by rising revenue numbers, but the underlying health of the business is compromised. The question then becomes, how do the most successful entities avoid being crushed by their own weight? The answer lies in a fundamental shift in strategy. The world's most enduring companies fight diseconomies of scale by artificially staying small, a strategy known as federation. Instead of one massive hierarchy, they operate as a collection of autonomous units, each with its own profit and loss responsibility and the power to make independent decisions. Amazon's famous two-pizza rule, stating that no team should be larger than what 2 pizzas can feed, is a direct defense against communication tax. By keeping teams under 10 people, they maintain the speed and accountability of a startup while leveraging the capital of a global giant. In the financial sector, firms like Berkshire Hathaway manage nearly $1 trillion in assets with a corporate headquarters of only about 30 people. By decentralizing authority to the managers of their subsidiary companies, they avoid the multi-million-dollar administrative bloat that plagues other holding companies. Another strategy is the use of externalization, where companies keep their core headcount lean and outsource non-essential functions. This allows them to scale their output by 400%, while only increasing their internal management costs by 50%, keeping the cost curve flat for much longer. History shows that the firms that survive the longest are those that prioritize modularity. When a system is modular, one part can fail or change without requiring a total overhaul of the entire organization, providing a biological-like resilience against the stagnation of size. Ultimately, the goal of a modern enterprise is not just to be the biggest, but to be the most efficient at every scale. Those who master the balance between the power of size and the speed of smallness are the ones who define the future of the global economy. True wealth is not built through mindless expansion, but through the precise management of complexity and the preservation of efficiency as a firm scales. If this changed how you think about business growth, the next video breaks down the psychology of the world's most successful capital allocators.